Hi, folks. Welcome to Lassoing Leadership. I'm your host, Garth Nichols.
And I'm Jason Rogers.
And Jason, I'm excited to be speaking about you today because of so many reasons. Episode 9 is amazing, but also because the Edmonton Oilers have just punched their ticket to the Stanley Cup Finals. And even though you're in Calgary, I know that you have some Oiler fans in your household. Am I right?
Oh, Garth, I've got a boy who's a Flames fan, a boy who is an Oilers fan, and we're all happen to be Oilers fans right now. We're all converted. Not since I was 7 years old watching the Oilers beat the New York Islanders with my father have I had so much fun watching hockey. We sit in the basement, watch the games, talk about the plays. We're having an absolute ball the whole time. And I know this episode is going to be released in the middle of the Stanley Cup series, but I'm calling an Oilers victory in 5. I can't wait.
In 5. Wow.
You got it. You heard it here first. And this is locked and loaded, Garth.
All right. Yeah, so hockey in Canada is kind of like football in the UK and like many European nations. And in Toronto, we're actually also gearing up for the World Cup of Soccer, which I think starts in less than a week here. It's being hosted in North America, and there's games here. So lots of excitement around soccer. And, with our last guest, Phoebe Trotman, a storied Canadian soccer player on the podcast, it's like soccer football mania here and, in my heart. So we're ready to go. But listen, enough about that, listeners. My name is Garth Nichols. I'm the Vice Principal of Havergal College in Toronto, where I focus a lot of my energy on leadership, global experiences, and innovation in education, and of course, this podcast.
Awesome, Garth. And I'm Jason, and I'm the head of school here at Rundle in Calgary, Alberta. And for those listeners who are new to the show, this podcast where we dive into individual episode of the hit TV series Ted Lasso to learn more about how to lead in a better, kinder, and more compelling way. We've created this podcast out of our love of learning, leadership, and of course, Ted Lasso.
Yeah. And one of the big learnings for Jason and I over the last couple of seasons was that we use this time to reflect on what's important to us about leadership, to be a little bit more creative in our thinking, and to invite you and our guests into this reflection. And so to do this, we talk about our favorite characters in the episode, some leadership lessons, and we also take a stab at renaming each episode just for fun. And then we always leave you with a leadership challenge based on our learnings.
And we sometimes, actually often, have incredible guests on the show. Yeah. But today, Garth, it's just you and I. We're going to have to, carry the shows ourselves and explore episode 9. And I understand, Garth, we've been talking about this episode for a really long time. And you've told me several times that this is one of your favorites. What do you think?
Yeah, every time I watch it, I get a little bit more from it, and I always somehow tear up, and it's just because there's so much in this episode, and I'm going to talk about that and maybe invite our listeners into a conversation at the end. So,
amazing. Okay, let's get this episode started. And so recently, we've had a little bit of feedback, Garth. If you don't mind, I happily share my feedback here with you. Yeah, right on. So I was at one of our graduations here at Rundle last week, and I had an alum for a couple of years ago approach me and tell me that he was actually listening to the podcast. Now, our demographic in 20 to 30 is probably a little bit smaller than the rest, but he said, I listen to it to and from school as I walk to my university classes, and it reminds me what it means to be a great leader in the world. And I've come to love Lasso and everything about it. And so I think to myself, even if one or two people are inspired to lead in a kinder, more compassionate, more compelling way, this is all really worth it. So that was some outstanding feedback. So thank you for that. And Garth, have you heard anything out there?
I actually had an old student pop by, Caroline. She's studying in California. She was on the basketball team 2 years ago.
Okay.
But she had a little compliment for us as well. So maybe that demographic is shifting. So let's keep it going. I'm going to do the episode summary.
Take it away, Garth. This is all yours. Yeah.
Because it is one of my favorite episodes. So this episode begins with the implementation of total football.
So fun.
Joy, fun. Things are looking up on the field. And even Ted says it's a whole bunch of fun. And even Roy compliments the team, and Coach Beard faints at it, all that stuff. But not all is well, because we know that Colin and Isaac still have tension between them after Isaac found out that Colin identifies as gay, and that Isaac shows that he's not yet up for true sort of Ted-like leadership just yet.
Mm-hmm.
Billy and Jack are a bit of a side story in this one. They're still on the outs with taking a break. Jack is ghosting Keely. Roy gets asked by Rebecca to do a press conference, but then ghosts his responsibility, and it ends in disaster as Beard shows a little too much for modern guitar players. Colin leans into Trent's good counsel, and actually, Trent plays a small role in this, but it's so impactful. And Trent's leaning into that sort of Ted style of leadership. Maybe he always had it in him. I don't know, Trent, but Nate and Jade's relationship is tested as we see Nate begin to see the dark side of Rupert Mannion. But it's also really clear. I mean, Jade is such an interesting character. She sees right through Rupert and gives Nate the space to make his own decision. Like, I really do love that. And then, of course, there's the iconic "get out of your own way, man" scene from Rebecca. It is almost as powerful for me as the "be curious, not judgmental" scene from a couple of episodes ago. But I'm sure we'll have more to say about this later, Jason. So listen, in total, this episode is about sort of misunderstandings, hidden truths coming to light, testing individuals' strengths and team strengths, and kind of Ted's ability to maintain harmony and direction. You know, Ted's kind of sitting above the fray in this. And I really like when he gets into it with his speech in the locker room. And that's why this episode is titled "The Crazy Locker Room" en français.
Wow. I mean, Garth, you nailed it. I think, before we came on the air, we mentioned that season 3 gets stronger and stronger every time we watch it. And this episode in particular, strength really shines through. I'd also add that Colin shows some masterful use of persistence, care, and humor to keep the relationship. And Isaac shows some persistence of his own. I think that those moments where Colin's figuring it out and then Isaac's coming around or demonstrating his true colors, which are really beautiful colors in the end, is really remarkable. Back to Isaac, he explodes on Colin first and then on a fan. While I don't advocate for anger and violence, I do advocate for sticking up for your team. These are some pretty incredible moments. This episode's so good. And I think it's better, like I said, the second time. So I encourage people to get back to it. Give it a watch, and I think you'll love every minute too.
Yeah, I love what you said, Jason, about Isaac showing his true colors, and it is not shown in a great way, but those true colors are still quite beautiful. Thank you. Cyndi Lauper nailed it, right? Okay, let's keep it rolling. Who's your favorite character in this one, Jason? Though I do have to say, I think I will agree with you, and I think he's a shining light in this episode. But there we go.
This is the lamest of them all because my character is, well, no surprises, right? It's Roy. He steals this show. I think it's his moment in the entire series. I mostly love the moment where Rebecca calls him out and tells him, because Harry brought him into her office. Roy knows he's in trouble. Before he leaves the locker room, he lightens the mood with the team. However, with that said, when he gets to Rebecca's office, he takes the feedback really well. You could see him reflecting on it. He's not lashing back. He's owning it. These are marks of incredible leadership in Roy's space, and Rebecca's handling it well as well. He's listening, he's not reacting, and he's internalizing the message. And there's so much more to Roy here. And I know, as we get through leadership lessons, he's going to pop up again for us. What about you, Garth? Are you finally a Kent convert?
Team Roy. I'm on Team Roy here. There's a couple moments with Jamie that I think are precious, but for me, it has to be Roy. All the things that you've said, but I want to highlight another couple of things. And I'm not like that. He said one is when he sits down with Isaac, he says, "I'm not here to yell at you." He diffuses the situation of Isaac really panicking and spiraling, and I think he just comes down to his own level. It's great. He says when he's talking to Isaac, he says, "Trust me." And then he follows that up with, "You have to deal with that, whatever you're dealing with, or you're going to mess up what it is that you really do care about." Love that message because it's coming from his own story. And then in the his post-game press conference that he owns, he takes accountability for it. He sits there and he's a storyteller. And we don't really ever see that from Roy before. And the storytelling is very much like Ted. It's deep. There's a lot of things you can take from it. And then, of course, he says whatever Isaac is going through, when he does that, Roy says, "I give him love." Come on. Roy, season 1, Roy would never say anything like that. And so for me, this is, he comes at it a little bit later than Jamie Tart, but this is the self-actualization of Roy for me. So for all these reasons, I'm on Team Roy.
And Garth, I'm
Won
going
me
to spend
over.
a minute more on Roy because he's worth it. But I really love the patience he shows in unfolding that story. The power of that narrative is so strong, and it's because he doesn't rush it at the end of the episode. I encourage everybody to go back to that speech. That is something else. And the other part that we wouldn't have expected from Roy before is what you said is you have to deal with that or you're going to mess up what you actually do care about. And it speaks to emotional intelligence. You know, he's
Mhm.
developed that emotional intelligence, but he knows there's something underlying and there's something bigger. And you gotta figure them both out, or you're gonna mess probably both of them up.
Yeah.
So, anyways, great moments, Garth. Let's move on to our leadership lesson of the episode. What do you have for our listeners?
I watched this episode a couple of times, and as I was watching, what I came away from it is that in leadership, timing is almost everything, right?
Yeah.
Isaac and Colin, they wait too long to talk to each other. Jack may have left Keely too early in the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we react to things when we actually need to slow down and respond to things. And even Higgins' joke in the locker room is off. You know, he's, come on,
Yes.
Leslie, read the room. But I remember at the beginning of this this season, Ted is asking himself the question, "What am I still doing here?" He has
Mm-hmm.
a feeling that he doesn't know what that feeling is, but he doesn't react to it and say, "You know what, I'm out of here." He waits and is curious, and you'll notice throughout this entire season, he's more and more in the background. Different characters rise up to leadership that are beside and around Ted. So many things happen that if he had left early, the potential of Richmond may have evaporated.
Yes.
Like total football is a great example of timing is everything. So I think my leadership lesson is like, think about timing in your own leadership. When is it right to send a message? When is it right to deliver a new project, start a new project, to communicate with parents? When is it right to actually answer the question and not just like listen to it and sit with that question? So to take one of the many leadership challenges we've issued this season, like maybe there's time for take time to do that to our listeners. This episode, anyway, for me, really speaks about the timing of leadership and that sometimes time can heal wounds, but also it reveals truths, and also time opens up opportunities. And the last thing I have to say is Jamie Tartt's timing. Sorry, I can't leave the episode talking about Jamie Tartt, but Jamie Tartt's timing in the locker room cheer when Sam Obasanya says, I'm honored to be your captain. I love you guys. Jamie says, on three, and the whole team, I love you very much on three. 1, 2, 3. I love you very much. I think it's just an incredible example of what timing can do. So there you go.
That was amazing, Garth. That was something else. And I do really think that timing bit is important. And at the very top of your comments, you talk about patience and timing
Mm,
too.
yep.
You know, we see that with Colin and Isaac. Like they're both, well, Colin more than Isaac, but are showing patience in the process. And I think even in our leadership, to sit back and take the time to reflect, not react, pretty powerful. Timing's everything. That was well captured. My leadership lesson comes in a moment. It's just a quiet moment. You mentioned earlier in the podcast at halftime when Isaac had already jumped into the stands, gotten his red card, and he confronts a fan. He comes back to the locker room, then goes straight into that boot room and isolates himself. And Roy, without hesitation, goes to join him. Now, it'd be easy, and in Roy's character, to try set him straight, to stand over him, perhaps be aggressive, maybe raise his voice. After all, Isaac is the captain of the team, and you'd expect a little
Yep.
bit more from him. But the subtle actions of Roy are what I want to really drill down on. If you remember, Roy just walks up, he sits down beside him. It's not confrontational, comes to his level, and speaks really calmly and quietly. They face the same direction together. We talked about orientation and meetings earlier in this
Yeah.
podcast, and this is a perfect example of it. Roy is patient, he's inquisitive, and he is really empathetic. There's so much empathy shown throughout this episode in all of the characters. And guess what? It takes a little patience on Roy's part, but Isaac responds really well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that response does lead into the conclusion of this episode with Colin as well. And it's got tons to do with the nonverbal communication that Roy is providing. It's not what he's saying, but probably what he's not saying that's drawing the best out of Isaac.
Oh, I love that. And Jason, great callback to the end of the episode where Colin and Isaac are sitting in the
Yes.
same position, right?
Yes.
And there's that scene where Colin says, "I love you, boyo." And turns to Isaac, and you can't even say it, can you? And Isaac says, "No, but you know I do." It's just, yeah,
So good.
it's really great. Hey, you're on a roll here, Jason. Let's carry on. What would you rename the episode?
Okay, Garth, you're going to have to, lean in for this one, but I offer gravity. Okay. I'm not sure if you remember, but while the parent-teacher interview with Ted is going on, Ted is obviously breaking the ice with the teacher, talking about his son, and he's rambling on about science with his son's teacher. He also cracks jokes about Isaac Newton. In this episode, there's a lot of action centered around Isaac, the character, McAdoo, coming to Earth, ultimately gravity. As Isaac comes to Earth and defends his teammate, he becomes more human, more relatable, and really a lot more likable. By the end of this episode, it's easy to be a huge Isaac fan. There are tender moments, like you'd mentioned before, where Isaac and Colin play video games together and discuss all those lingering questions. As they come to Earth together, they connect. This relationship will ground them both and will serve them well. Gravity. What about you, Garth?
Nice. That's heavy.
Thank you.
I'm such a sap when it comes to this episode. I really like gravity. I'll go with that. But for me, it was Roy Kent. Leaders give love. It's I love this episode. Definitely inspired by Roy's incredible leadership throughout. I also played around like that post game or interview press conference. I played around with like Goblin King. Like that's a name that Roy calls one of the reporters. Or I played around with the idea of like eliminate the 1%, and that refers to Colin's comments, but what held him back from telling Isaac. 99% of him was sure that Isaac would support him, but it was that 1% that really held him back. Either way, we need to consider how we lead with love, how we can help, not keep our people back. And so this doubles as a renaming, but also a leadership challenge, right? Like leaders give love. What can you do for the teams that you lead? All right. Speaking of leadership challenge, you got one for us, Jason?
Yeah, in a second. I'm not ready to jump there, though, because when I did my master's program at the University of Calgary for educational leadership, I took a course just out of pure convenience, and it was called Love and Leadership. And I remember thinking, it's going to be easy credit and not that interesting, maybe, or too soft. But at the end of the day, I ended up taking 3 courses on the topic.
Wow.
And I totally agree with you. You win the day, and I think love and leadership are to be combined. Like it is a heartfelt pursuit, and I think there's really something there, Garth. So I'm giving it to you.
Let's move in, Dr. Jason Rogers. Thank you so much.
Let's move into leadership challenge. For me, I've got it here. So Rebecca asks Roy after he goes to that press conference, "What do you want, Roy?" Sure, she's a little confrontational. She's a little aggressive, but Roy responds to that. But she closes with, "What do you want, Roy?" In this statement, we find our leadership challenge this week. Take a moment and ask somebody who's close to you, "What do you want?" And just listen from there. It doesn't have to be a moment of conflict, probably better if it's not. But simply asking a question will help you better understand motivations and motivators for those who you work alongside.
Love it. Leadership challenge accepted. I really love that one. Just listen, Yeah, now's a good time in education. Now's a good time. What do you want next year? What your teaching assignments are, what your role is next year. That's a really good one. Thank you for that, Jason.
Yeah,
I have an additional leadership challenge for our listeners too, because
let's have it.
We only have a limited number of time in a podcast because we try and keep it short. So if there is a listener out there that wants to do another podcast with us on this episode of the Crazy Locker Room, we're open. We're up for it. So reach out, let us know. Can we do that, Jason? Is that all right? Is that good by you?
Let's do a retake on this one. There's at least 3 episodes worth of content in this one episode.
I think so.
Good.
Yeah. All right. So Denise LaMarche, if you're listening, you said like in season 2, you're like, wait till season 3. So I'm calling you out on this one. Come on the podcast. Let's talk. Amazing. So everyone, thanks for listening, everybody. And as a reminder, if you like what you've heard, rate the podcast, share it with your friends. We still want to get Sudeikis on here.
It's not too late.
Never too late. Jason, take us home.
Until next time, keep leading the Lasso way. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.